Welcome to today's episode for people interested in the extraordinary, yet ancient and long forgotten stuff. This is your host, Joseph Schinwald from ombythebeach.com. Our guest today is Ken W. Stone, and I'm very, very excited to have Ken on the podcast. Hello, Ken.
It's wonderful to be with you, Joseph. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's a privilege. The topic today is resonance, the path of spiritual mastery. But before we start asking questions, I will introduce Ken W. Stone. He is a spiritual teacher, messenger, and healer. He's the founder of the Resonance Experiment and author of the forthcoming book, Resonance, the Path of Spiritual Mastery. God expresses through Ken in a unique way. When people sit with him in transmission, they have a profoundly different experience of the divine in their body. For example, he has worked with a number of advanced former students of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who each said unprompted following their initial session with him, "That was the deepest spiritual experience of my life." Moreover, he received testimonials about his work from extraordinary people like Dr. Lipton, Father Thomas Keating, Derek Rydall, and Reverend Dr. Lorraine Cohen, to name a few. Ken shares his gifts with spiritually diverse, growing international audience through a variety of virtual in-person programs, retreats, and one-on-one work. Ken, let's start with my first question. You know, we both know Rumi, the 13th century Persian mystic. He once said that you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. So why is it that we feel separated from it all, even though we have the entire universe within us?
Well, it seems to me that what you're focusing on is something that I perceive as the greatest gift that we receive from the divine, the illusion of separation. And I guess one way to think about the spiritual journey or the living of a life is the shift from the perception that is deeply imbued in separation and the transition from that as the dominant perceptual view to the recognition of the entire ocean in the drop within our being. That is to say, everyone and everything, and perhaps not on a deeper level, but from a different perspective, all of divinity within and expressing through and as each of us. And I guess that's what makes it so interesting to be in the body, to be incarnated, is to be able to explore that shift from thinking that we're separate from ourselves or one another or the divine to actually not just connected, but one with, so intimately connected that at least I don't have any language for it. I like Rumi's language.
Yes, it's always poetic, right? I mean, when we go to a certain level, like of metaphysics or whatever you call it, we are becoming ambiguous and language is not enough. Then we start telling similes or metaphors, parables, because we can't express it. And but I think it's also, even though I like it very much the way you explained it, that it is actually like it's a good thing, because we have now the journey to find this state of mind where we feel now completely oneness. It doesn't mean for me that I have to give up my existence, who I am.
Exactly.
There's enough space in this universe that everybody can be everything, like a fractal thing, right? Like Rumi said, you have everything in you, but at the same time, everybody else has everything in you.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that was a very nice answer. Let's go to the next question. I do it step by step.
It's perfect.
The thing really, what interests me most is, why is it rare for mystics to find a roadmap and structure which takes the reader by the hand and guides them to a direct encounter with God?
Well, yeah, I want to answer this question, but I want to share a small story that of a conversation I had with a mystic, with Father Thomas Keating, some years ago, and I had the incredible privilege to interview him in person. So I sat with him face to face at the monastery where he lived very close to the end of his life. I interviewed him less than a year and a half before he transitioned, before he died, and he was in the he was living in the monastery, and I was there on retreat, and I asked one of the monks, if there was any possibility that I might be able to interview him. And I couldn't believe that the answer was yes. And so we sat down together, and I set up my audio recording equipment and all this stuff. And, and he sat there with a big grin on his face. And then he asked me a bunch of questions that I didn't really, in fact, it's taken me years to kind of unpack the questions and the comments that he shared with me. But in any case, at one point, I remember we were in the middle of the interview, the conversation, and I kept having this thought coming up. I wanted him to describe his experience as a mystic in his own terms. And he kept quoting other people. He would say, Jasper says da 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 da, and so says this. And, I would ask him a question, and he would use these quotes as a way of communicating his answer. And I said to him, I'm interested in hearing it from your perspective. And he looked right at me and he said, I am telling you from my perspective. And it took me years to figure out what that meant, that he was so integrated that he was able to deploy the language of others as his own, that was his pure expression. So it's not really a very direct answer to your question, but I think one of the things that that I feel a compulsion to, and I don't know that it's necessarily common or present in many mystics, is to teach. I feel like it's, and if you had asked me, when I started this, when I sort of woke up spiritually, are you a mystic? I would have said, oh no, I'm not a mystic. That's not what's happening here. That has nothing to do with this. But as I was going into this experience with people, I didn't have any language at all for it. And people were sort of frustrated with me. I mean, this is while I was still in the trial period, the proof of concept or whatever you want to call it. I mean, my proof of concept makes it sound like it was a business proposition. It wasn't a business proposition at all. What it was for me was, is this real? And on a deeper level, am I a fraud? Is this like, is this even legit? Like, I have to figure this out. And as I was sort of sharing this raw expression with other people, they kept asking me, well, what is this? What's happening here? And I had no language for it at all. I mean, it was like I was being transported to a different dimension of reality or something when I was working with people. And I had no idea what was happening. I mean, I would convulse uncontrollably, sounds would come out of me, my hands and feet would be buzzing, and so on. And so when I made the decision I'm really interested in trying to make this my life. In other words, I'd been working as a mortgage lender to that point, and I thought, can I make a living at this? This is so extraordinary. If I could leave mortgage lending behind and just do this all the time, I can't even imagine how fulfilling my life would be. And so one of the questions that I kept asking God was, what am I going to teach? Can you give me something to say? Because the sessions were all in silence to that point. And when I started asking that question, I thought there would be an answer for what I laughingly refer to as the big five, the things that most people are trying to figure out how to solve in their lives. Is it money? Is it relationship? Is it their purpose? Et cetera, right? Health is one of them. How do I connect to divinity? And so I thought I would get a different process for each of these because I was in separation. I was asking the question in separation. And what came in was this answer, this download in the fall of 2010 that was effectively the answer, not just to these questions, but to every question. And what I said out loud when I received the download was, that's it? I mean, I couldn't believe it was so simple. It was like, what is this? Why is it so simple? Why is it so straightforward? Again, I realize I'm not answering your question, but so, and that was in 2010. Here we are in whatever, it's July of 2022 as we're sitting together, Joseph. So whatever this is, 12 years, almost 13 years later, or almost 12 years later, I guess is a better way of doing the math on that. And every moment in the meantime, I have spent effectively trying to understand these downloads, but not in my intellect, but in a way that I can convey them and teach them to others. And so basically my entire life has been about how can I share not just this experience that just floods through me and floods through people that I'm sitting with, but how can I help them understand how this works, how we work, how it really is that we are undistorted expressions of divinity, not the idea of that, the experience of that. And the thing is, I mean, I don't know, because I guess I've spent so much time kind of in the interior, this conversation with Keating, certainly a very well-recognized and well-known mystic. Maybe every mystic has this instinct. I mean, I would say one of Keating's projects in his life was to open, certainly he was involved on a very intimate level with the contemplative prayer movement and in developing contemplative prayer along with William Mininger and Basil Pennington. And I think that is just an incredible gift that the three of them, shared with the world. And there's a structure associated with that. And I don't know if it's because of my weirdness of how I'm wired, my lack of background in this, my lack of formal education or whatever, or maybe it's the fact that I was in finance. And so in finance, things fit together like a puzzle. And so I wanted this to fit together like a puzzle. I don't know, whatever it was, it's just led me to continually ask this question: what is unfolding here? And how can I most effectively communicate this and share this with other people that in a way that opens an intimate experience of divinity for the person who's engaging in it, not on my terms, not a dogma, in other words, a process, an experiential, dimensional opening within them that deepens and supports their deeper intimacy with divinity by whatever name. Doesn't matter to me. And as far as I could tell, God doesn't really care either, although that may be hard for some people to hear. I might already be checking off the heretic box here for having said it this way. But in any case, from my perspective, God doesn't care. I don't care. So let's say my project, but it's not even really mine. It's more like the expression of divine will through me. If that doesn't sound too, I don't mean it in a grandiose way. I think divine will moves in each of us in a really profound and unique way. And the way that has unfolded through me has been has been about, sort of uncovering, excavating this structure that is really a temporary. It's like a scaffolding. It's there for a while, and then it has to melt away, because in its place is the actual experience of divinity rather than a structure that opens to divinity. And as we encounter that structure, as we encounter that intimacy with divinity, the value of the structure instantly disappears, at least in my mind, because why would you engage in a structure if you could have the real thing? Why go through a specific process or even a spiritual practice when you can actually be opening to what the practice is designed to open in awareness and experience?
Yes, Ken, absolutely. It's like, I see it like the map is not the territory. Like some, I don't know his name exactly, who wrote it the first time in the book, but many people quote this. And I'm in Mallorca, like hiking now. And, I look at the map first on the internet. Where's the trail? I need it. Otherwise I get lost 100 times, because there's so many ways to go. And, but then when I go out, I'm not thinking about the map anymore. I just look at the signs and I have the experience. And so for me, it's like I'm more philosophically oriented. And I know always, I'm very aware of it, that everything I can think is just a map. And what the reality is, nobody really knows, like that he could explain it generically. Like this is the textbook of reality, because there's so many mental models about reality, starting from, ancient wisdom tradition to modern science. I mean, actually, it's interesting, the Upanishads, the Indian scriptures, they actually start out that all these yogis are really enlightened and they are yogis and all this, but nobody knows anything. But then comes all this wisdom from those yogis. But it's at the same time, like nobody knows anything. And then there's this incredible freak, Taoist, funny guy, Taoist founder, not Lao Tzu, but Chuang Tzu. And he has a beautiful, beautiful quote, and it resonates with your word, resonance. Resonance actually is coming from sonare, which is sound. And we in the Judeo-Christian tradition, everything is about light, and but in the Eastern tradition, it's very much the sound is first, right? It's like it creates these vibrations, and then it puts itself into like plasma, like plasmic form, and it creates that illusion we have, which is the world. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor. Chuang Tzu mentioned here, he says, I was born surrounded by the light of an idiot. And then he talks about how the world is. And it sounds very Hindu, but it's Taoist, ancient Taoist. And it's like the sound of a bird. The bird, the whole universe is like this. The bird opens its beak, its mouth, its beak, it says, right? And it's uttering its sound, and then it closes it again. And that's what we experience, There's nothing about it. I also had some spiritual experiences, and I don't want to take much time from this, but I need to mention it because I'm now in the presence of you. And I had one when I was quite young, like 22. I read also the Upanishads, and I read God is in all sentient beings, and all sentient beings are in God. That night I laid down and I slept, and then I went out to this universe. And it was so fascinating because it's like I became all this universe. But then I got people like you surrounding me, and everybody, and I looked at them. It was way up there in the universe, and everybody seemed to say, it wasn't like a real conversation, but spiritually, there's no language. There's just this thought coming from the heart, right? And everybody say, it's me, it's me, it's me. So I realized, wow, you know what? Amazing, everybody's me. But we are also different because we have different desires for our experiences. And the other time was it was in Korea, and I was kind of a part of a religious denomination. I don't want to mention it even, because I'm not anymore. I'm totally free. I'm not anything anymore. But I had this out-of-body experience. I wake up at 1:00 in the morning. I touch my hand. I can't believe it. I'm at the foot of a mountain, and the mountain is part of this universe. It's the earth. All around is nothingness. and I'm right there. And then there comes this inner voice again to me. The first thing, it like even lifted me up further. And I don't believe, honestly speaking, I don't believe in a personal God. And I don't believe any dogma, of course, either. But that time I was kind of influenced by it. And it reminds me, of course, of William James. And when he wrote the book, The Variety of Religious Experiences, that everybody interprets it according to his own culture and his own religious upbringings, his own dogmas, whatever. So the first thing was like this voice. Jesus is not my only son. the whole thing lasted 3 hours, but I can tell you, I was a long time interpreting it, and right now I would say there's no difference between this experience and the now we are experiencing right now, because the world is so magic. Mm-hmm. You know, the world is so magic. The day is so magic. The existence has so much mystery and magic in it that it's right now, that experience is right now all the time, if you are aware of it. And I stopped completely interpretation, because, you know, our brain always tries to find meaning. And then we are always in the map. But you know what? It's this incredible experience. It lasted 3 hours, made me cry. It was incredible. I can't explain it. But I don't think there's any difference between the now and then. And I don't try to find any interpretation anymore, because it's just the way our life is. It's a mystical thing, our life. It's a magic thing, our life. And we have to acknowledge it. Like our friend, Megan Onan, which I interviewed last week, she said it very, very beautifully. She said, we have to accept that mystery, just leave it there, because we cannot know everything. And I think also that if we know everything, then we lose the mystery, and that is then, you know, if you're not ignorant at the same time and gain knowledge, it's that duality. Too much said from my part. I'm not the person interviewed.
No, you're not saying too much at all. What I think is so interesting about what you're talking about is, I mean, at least the way I interpret it, is often when people are talking about their understanding of divinity, it's the projection based on what they know or think they understand. But it seems to me that the real invitation is to let go of the things that we think we know or understand about divinity and step into the unknown. And as we step into the unknown, what we shift from is an intellectual kind of understanding or even a heart-based dynamic into a being experience, which is an entirely different kind of knowledge. I think of it as embodied knowledge. It's not even knowledge that has language to it. It's an experience that is washing through us, over us, in us. And we can stay in the mystery, in the experience, and we don't need to interpret. We don't need to understand. We can be in the being experience of that. And I think that is a fascinating opportunity and invitation. As you say, every aspect of life is that mystical dynamic. The question is, are we having that experience? Mm-hmm. And if we can let go of the ideas that we think we understand and sort of stop projecting them on God, and instead step into the mystery mm-hmm. of divine presence, mm-hmm. you know, something entirely different begins to unfold. And it's so extraordinary.
Yeah, it's like, let go of the map, right? Let go of the map and just go into the territory, like go into the real moment. And, you know, our culture is really so obsessed with, I'm guilty of that. We are so obsessed with the fascination of the future, the importance of the future. Yeah, which is just a concept, really, an abstraction of the mind. And then we are so fixated on the past, and then we just lose the moment, and then we don't have that kind of spirituality starts, like Paul Tillich said, you know, the famous theologian, and many others, you know, like it's the eternal now. And that is a fascinating thing, because Woody Allen once said, eternity? Well, eternity takes a long time at the end, you know. But the eternal now you can understand, because it's like the Dalai Lama, you know, the Tibetans, it's absolute relative, everything, which is the past and the future is absolute relative. Our time now is relative to the now. And that's what I think about it. So I think it's very important to learn from you more about this stepping into the body. When I listened to an interview you had on a top-notch podcast, like a world-class podcast, what was it called? The Head.
The Positive Head.
The Positive Head, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic interview. And I just listened to it today in preparation of our interview. And you explained this a little bit, and I found it very, very fascinating. And a spiritual experience, we always have a spiritual experience. It's like, we're just, I don't know how you say it, but it's all spiritual. We are not, physically, it's just like, I don't know, an expression. Now, what I wanted to say here is that you had a story about like the way the chakras work, and we try always to go from like upwards, but we are already, like, when you're a philosopher, like a wannabe philosopher like me, then you're always up there somewhere, right? Like mystic, metaphysical. But it's the point is now, for spiritual people often to actually go down and experience all the chakras and the lower chakras also, because one has to integrate it, as you mentioned many times.
I'm the same way.
So the question for me really is, how does like a philosophical person, right? Like we have also the 4 paths of yoga, the 4 kinds of yogas in India, and one is the Jnana yoga. These are the philosophers. They recognize philosophy through thinking sometimes, that's a map and it's not reality. Then there's the Bhakti yoga, which is all of Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition is really Bhakti yoga. It's like devotional yoga, right? And then devotional to a god or gods, whatever. And then they have these other kinds, Raja yoga and what have you. But the point here is that not everybody is same. Even Carl Jung said that already. Some people, there are different characters, different personalities, and we have to recognize it. I am a certain personality. We are probably not the same personalities, and there are many others. So my personality is like, how do I get into my body, really? How do I feel that divine presence through my body? And how do I feel not disconnected with the rest and feel wholeness and oneness? That's a question.
Yeah. Well, you might be surprised to learn this, Joseph. You and I are more similar than maybe you realize. I studied philosophy, and for me, thinking has been a huge part of my life. I would say the first spiritual question that I asked was, is God real? And once I answered that, and I answered that relatively young, then the question is, how can I experience God? And that took me a long time to answer. And the answer came, not surprisingly, not intellectually, but in an experience. And the experience was with the first person that I worked with energetically, the first sort of healing session I did, which had just happened spontaneously. A friend was having a migraine or something, and I said, can I put my hands on your head? Apparently I'm a healer. This guy told me I was a healer. I thought, let's try this and see what happens. And I put my hands on this person's head, and my hands started buzzing and my feet started buzzing, and the headache went away. And I started crying, and I thought, here I am having an experience of God. This is the first experience of God I've ever had in my body. But every part of my life to that point was all about thinking, all about solving the problem, figuring out the answer, getting deeper into the map. And from that moment until this moment, everything now, as we've been talking about, has been trying to answer that question, but now from the perspective of here's the experience. Here's the experience. And the thing that I have come to, and it's not a very sophisticated answer at all, is, okay, blah, blah, blah. Here's the map. Here's how it is. Here's some quasi-cohesive narrative about soul embodiment and so on. And I've written extensively about it. I'm not trying to minimize my writing. I'm just saying, here's the roadmap, blah, 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 blah. Here's how it works. And then that's really not that interesting unless we combine it with an experience.
Yes.
Unless we're actually going into an experience of soul embodiment, for example. And in the experience of soul embodiment, even though I've written extensively and, I'm working on this book and on and on and on, I write, there's just endless volumes of writing about this. Still, the honest truth is that when I'm in transmission or in session or whatever you want to call it, I have no idea what's happening. It's like we're just instantly stepping into the mystery. And in the mystery, we're enveloped in the mystery. And for whatever reason, I have a story about it, but the reality is I don't know. The way that God works through me leads to this experience, this visceral experience of divinity in the body. And when that happens, everything changes. It's incredible. It's like I look at it, people reflect on their experience of it. And I've been doing this, full time, making my living at it since the beginning of 2010 or 2011, I guess, is when I started making my living full time at it. And still, almost no matter what someone says about their experience of being in session, my job comes unhinged and I can't, it's like, my gosh, God is so amazing. Divinity, source, whatever you want to call it, universe, the nameless, the emptiness, whatever we want to think of it as, or not name it, that it's incredible. The minute we start having this direct experience of it, it's astonishing. So, yeah. The how, I guess the easiest answer I can give you is, well, let's just go into session together and we'll stop talking and we'll go have the experience together.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing that is, at the end of the day, I'm going to guess that's the most meaningful thing for anyone, because however I perceive the world, as you point out, it's different than how you perceive the world.
Yes.
Your central nervous system is unique and so on. You've had the life you've lived. It's different than my life, so on and so forth. Everyone has their own experience. And when you can, through the filter, through the lens of your consciousness, of your life, your story, when you can have that experience for yourself, it has meaning for you, or it doesn't. But the meaning is independent of whatever I think is going on. It's entirely a function of your context.
I would love to do a session with you during our podcast. But before that, I would like to say something. It's like, I'm aware that the body is a kind of a portal. And, the body is super important. I'm aware of that. But I have a body. I'm not the body. That is a meditation principle, so to speak, like in Buddhist Vipassana. It's like you are not identifying with the body. You're not identifying, not even with the mind. That's all words which are used in different connotations or meanings in different traditions. But usually the mind is there's a distinction between the mind and consciousness. The mind is like an ox. The mind goes this way and that way, and you have to tame it and you have to ride it home. Then it disappears. Then your ego disappears. And then you're suddenly in your pure consciousness, which I believe, again, recognizing the ox means already that you have to recognize your body in a way and your mind in a way, because without it, you're going just in abstractions. You're not real. You're lucid. And so for me, it's the question really is, how can I view the body like the world? Like the world doesn't exist without my body. People put their jewelry on their necklaces, and whatever. They put all kinds of Rolex watches and all this. But really, I like it also if I have a Rolex watch. But I tell you, it's nothing compared to the eyes, right? Or to our body, which is just an incredible thing. Mm-hmm. So why do I say this now? I just say it because I sometimes, go too often into like abstractions myself. And, I want to return more to the permanent presence of who I am, because really everything is referring always to ourselves. I don't look anything outside, because there are beautiful things, metaphors again from ancient scriptures, where everything is reflecting everything else, that image, that mirror images, right? And you can't look outside because everything reflects within you. You know, everything reflects. If you go outside, you won't find anything. But at the same time, there is this paradox, and everything is paradoxical in spirituality. Like what I remember Jesus saying in the Gospel of Thomas, it stuck with me. He says, in the Gospel of Thomas, Gnostic scripture. It's not one of the evangels, the official ones, but it's like the Nag Hammadi library, one of those. And he says, if the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds will be there before you. And if the kingdom is in the ocean, in the sea, then the fish will be there before you. No, the kingdom, he says, is inside of you and outside of you. So now we're talking exactly about that we have that relationship. Without that, we cannot exist. We are, it's implying the outside and the inside, yet the inside for everybody is subjective presence. It's subjective presence. And I say this because that's my kind of thinking before we go into the session, because I struggle with it, honestly speaking. Sometimes,
one of the things, I mean, you're bringing up something, Joseph, that I think is really important that I would want to just offer my perspective on. And I guess my perspective is different than what you're sharing. I mean, I'm part of I don't know whether sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes it's a challenge. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking one of the thoughts that's going through my mind is, oh my gosh, Joseph, you have studied at such amazing depth and have all this enormous wisdom about all these, spiritual texts and so on. I don't have that. That's not part of my path in this lifetime. So one of the things that, and as I say, I think that's maybe a blessing sometimes, but also potentially a challenge. One of the things I'll say to you, though, is that although I understand this idea of not associating, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, to me, this is a developmental stage of the process of integration, but it's not the ultimate stage, in my view. In my view, there's another step here. There's the process of disassociating or disembodying, which is what I perceive that perspective that you just gave voice to is. I am not my thoughts. I am not my body. That's a way of detaching or disassociating with a disempowered perspective. So the mind might be feeling all these things are happening to me, all these challenges are coming in my life, woe is me, right? Or some version of that, right? The body might be feeling that. The body might be having extraordinary discomfort and pain. It might sustain. There might be a narrative associated with that. And so this type of perspective is very powerful. I am not my thoughts. I am not my body. I dissociate from this dynamic, and now I'm no longer identified with this disempowered perspective. But if we continue with the developmental arc, in my view, at some point, we must identify with and actually integrate with the mind and the body. And at that point, we're, at least in my view, no longer are we saying, I am not these things. I'm actually saying, I am this. I am my body. It's like saying the divine and I are one, except rather than trying to focus on divinity, we just start at home here. My body and I are one. My mind and I are one. I am my body. I am my mind. And see, when we have this opportunity to go through this process of integrating, associating with all the aspects of the corporeal expression, what happens, in my view, if it's combined with a conscious soul embodiment practice, is we're actually begin transmuting the noise, the dissonance, the reason for I am not these things, right? Whatever it is, the unhappy emotion, the challenging things in the body and so on. But rather than addressing them from a mental perspective, from an individual perspective, it's divine presence in combination with the feeling of those things that transmutes all the noise, all the dissonance. And what is left, what is revealed in that is more and more of divine wholeness, of divinity as the body, divinity as the mind. So as we move into that from a developmental perspective, at least in my view, what's happening is we become, let's say, we have an opportunity for deeper intimacy with the things that inspired or triggered the dissociation initially, but rather than handling them at arm's length, we invite them in to a profoundly intimate place. And what we end up discovering is here also is divinity. Here is God in my thoughts. Here is God in my body. Here is God in all these experiences, including in the suffering that many associate as a necessary or an essential aspect of the human condition.
Yeah, I like that explanation, and it really answers my questions, because, you know, it's a certain stage when we identify completely with the body, or we identify completely with our ego, which is the mind, in a sense,
Sure.
the egoic
Sure.
mind. Then it's good in meditation to say, I'm not just that.
Right.
I'm not just the body. I'm not just the mind.
Right.
I'm actually consciousness. But I'm not
Right.
only consciousness either, because if I'm only consciousness, and after you die, you might just be awareness only. But
Right.
what is it then? You want to come back, or you want to be again experiencing things. And how can you experience things? How can you have fun in life or in existence? Again, you need the body. But ultimately, it is, in Hinduism, for instance, to say, for me, the ultimate goal also is basically this, what they say, and I'm not a Hindu, I'm just saying I like it, I take it for me, I receive it for myself, for my own life, I use it for me as an expression, because exactly the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition, which I respect totally, I studied it, I have a master's in divinity, I studied it, but I don't associate, or I don't identify with this angry God up there, or with a stupid mythology, which is like the Garden of Eden. For me, you know, I shouldn't say stupid, but it is ridiculous.
Right.
And, you know, so I think that very much that the Indians who say the Hindu culture, the Hindu religions, and it comes also from shamans, and then there were city-states, and the shamans, they were also, that message they had before the city-states came into being was not like diluted by power of the priests, you know, but it's like Sat, Chit, Ananda. It's like Sat, Chit, Ananda. It's like existence, consciousness, and bliss. The three things. Ultimately, that's who you are for them, right? And it's so fascinating that even in Taoism, there is this philosopher, Alan Watts, yeah, he says like the Tao could be compared to a baby. The word Tao could be compared to a baby who says da, 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 Tao, Tao, Tao. Like, you know, and then you go to the Buddhists, and there's the main thing here is the suchness, which means ta-ta-ta. Again, this Alan Watts sees it like this, like a baby, ta-ta-ta. But it's always referring that we cannot really like reach anything beyond ourselves. It's like we are a seed of a tree. We are not yet the tree. We don't have that spiritual mastery yet, but we are already fully potentially we are it, you know, we are everything. So let's go and do a session with you. If I make sense, please respond. If I don't make sense, I would like your answer also, because, you know, I'm talking there, and it's typical me, you know.
Well, I mean, the thing, I guess my perception about the role of the integrated self is that it is a concurrent experience. So the whole self is concurrently available and fully expressing. As to whether or not we're having a conscious experience of it or not, that's the interesting question. And so to me, the spiritual journey is really about excavating or uncovering what is already there, the whole self, the divine expression. So, I mean, this is another sort of linking back to your question about sort of coming into the body. In my view, we're not ascending. We're not vibrating out of our bodies. We're descending. We're opening to something that is already there, the fully expressed, embodied divine mystery within. And as we uncover that and integrate that and embody that, just as you've said, that is an inner exploration. And at some point, actually, the things that previously looked or we experienced as mirrors, including the body, including the outward expression of life, the mirror falls away. As they integrate, they are no longer a reflection. They are the actual thing. They are the undistorted expression of divinity in form. And of course, that's a rather extraordinary level of integration and embodiment. But when I say extraordinary, I don't mean unachievable. I just mean relative to the everyday experience that most of us are having of some aspect of separation being a dominant part of what we're experiencing or how we're feeling or what's unfolding in our lives and so on. But in my view, it's just as available to any of us as it was to anyone in history or anyone who has yet to come. And the question, it seems to me, isn't so much, do we have to manufacture or create it as much as just uncovering what's already there.
That's why you call Soul Archeologist.
Exactly.
But it reminds me very much on a very key notion in Taoism, which is the uncarved block. I mean, society carves us, but it's also the notion of like the usefulness of a tree, which is like ugly and nobody wants it, doesn't serve for fire, burn wood. It doesn't serve anything. It looks ugly, but you know what? It is left alone by society. Somebody might sit underneath for the shadow, but it lives a beautiful life. So it's uncarved by society. So in a sense, to excavate or to dig into who you are by taking things away. This is not me. This is not me. This is not me. What is left over, like the typical via negativa, the typical negative path, so to speak, of spirituality, of the mystics. What is left over is, again, that ultimate integration. You are not only your body, basically. You're not only your mind, but you're all of it. You integrate it.
Exactly.
Now. But you are consciousness mostly. But there was this voice in my head. Voice, not my thought. I don't have voices in my head, fortunately. There is this, the body, we are going to lose the body. And some people in the Orient, they speak like the body, particularly Hinduism. And I like Hinduism, Buddhism, just the way. But Buddhism comes from Hinduism, and Buddhism came to China, and then it became also involved with Taoism. So it's a really nice mixture. You get a lot of wisdom from it. And it's like we are taking off the body like clothing there, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of compared to like a rib, rest in peace, like in that cave and that decaying body. That doesn't make sense to me, honestly speaking. It makes more sense to me that the body is just like the world. It's the world. Through the body, we experience everything. Everything. We need it in order to experience. Otherwise, we cannot grow. We cannot live. But when we die, then it's like we take it off like clothing. And the idea, of course, of reincarnation is we get a new one, a new body. To have new experiences, because it's all about the fascination we have with experiences, because we can't really, there at least in this philosophies, we can't really achieve anything beyond ourselves because we are it already. Even though as a seed, we are not yet the full-grown tree. So I just struggle with this, and that's why I'm so happy that I can talk with you. And if you want to respond to what I just said, blah blah blah, fine, it's great, I love it. But otherwise, let's go to the session, for everybody, because probably some listeners are already waiting for it.
Yeah.
Joseph, you're talking too much.
Well, I think the thing that comes to me when you're talking about we take the body off like clothing, I just get the image of the breath. And it seems to me that the breath offers us this same opportunity. Each breath, right? When we draw in, we receive anew. And when we exhale, we drop everything. And so it's almost like with the breath, we are reincarnating again and again and again in the context of this lifetime. So as we release the breath, we drop everything, or at least that's an opportunity. There's an invitation with the exhalation to drop everything. And when we breathe in, to receive everything.
Yes.
And in doing so, it seems to me there's an opportunity to step further into the mystery, further into the unknown, because if we release the construct, the map, so to speak, with every breath, what reveals itself again and again is the incarnation of divine expression as you.
Yes. Yeah, I like it. I like the thought that, to combine, even integrate, even the map with reality. It doesn't have to go away, the map, but it has to be conscious that it is a map. And then you can have the full experience. And still know that you come with the whole thing. You come also with the map. I mean, it's beautiful that we can think and we can philosophize and all this, but it's not, we shouldn't, like Wittgenstein. I learned from you. You like Wittgenstein. He's Austrian like me. He was Austrian.
Yeah.
I read him also, and it's like typical. He talks a lot about this, that we have everything is a representation of what is, right? Yeah. And everything in our mind is a representation. So I think that we should go to a session, because I really learned so much from listening to the other podcast today. And you did a session there, and it's fantastic. I had an experience actually.
Yeah, you did. Good.
Yes, I did.
Well, maybe after we do this one, you can talk about that or talk about.
So I'm now all quiet.
Okay, good. Well, okay. So what I'll just say, and how long should we do this for, Joseph? You want to do 5 or 10 minutes of exploration?
Yeah, 5-10 minutes is good.
Okay, great.
However long it takes, 5-10 minutes is excellent.
Okay, perfect. Well, then I'll just turn the conversation towards the circle that is participating with us, that's listening in. And the first thing I'll just say is a gentle reminder that please don't operate a motor vehicle or heavy equipment of any sort during what's about to unfold here, because many, many people have reported over the years that they drop out. They go to sleep when they're in session with me, and they don't even know when it's going to happen. So you wouldn't want to be driving a vehicle and drop out, especially if there were no warning. So please do, if you're listening to the podcast and you're driving right now, pull off to the side of the road and just park. And then you can put yourself in a place where if it's comfortable, you can close your eyes. And if it's comfortable, breathe in and out through the nostrils and your palms to the sky and so on. And let's just take in a deep breath and hold. And as you release this breath now, just let go of everything that has come before in this day, all the way out to the count of 8. And another deep breath in. Hold. And as you release this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since you were born, all the way out to the count of 8. And one last deep breath in. Hold. And release. All the way out to the count of 8. Now letting go of everything that has come before since the inception of your soul. Although I may continue talking through the transmission, don't worry about the words. If they start to disappear, it's perfect. If the words I use don't make sense, just let them go. What is being enlivened within you is something already there. divine presence. And as you embody, you may well open to a deeper experience of that. But whatever unfolds is perfect. For whatever remains in separation, I invite you to remove the universal plug. I'll do the same. And let's begin. 7. In the head, in the mind, one of the most prized resources for us as humans, thoughts, ideas, insight. Release them all as you descend. 6. The intuitive faculty, however it may have expressed, however you may experience it, release it as well as you descend. 5. Anytime something comes up, the invitation is there to feel fully, whatever it is. Discomfort in the body, a memory, a thought, joy, laughter, tears, whatever it is. When you allow yourself to express it fully, while engaged in a conscious embodiment practice, divine alchemy results. The noise is transmuted. 4. It doesn't matter if you understand where the noise is from, the origin of it does not matter. Just feel it. Doesn't matter if you think it's yours or not. If it's showing up for you, there's something there for you. Just allow yourself to feel it. Noticing waves of physical resonance moving through the body. Perhaps you're feeling the same, and maybe not. Whatever is unfolding is perfect. 3. You may become aware of an aspect of the body that's held in tension. Just release it. Let it all go. The thoughts, the feelings, even the dominant way of being, whatever it is. Not letting it go because there's a problem with it. Letting it go to open up to a deeper experience of the divine mystery. 2. One. If it's helpful, you can notice with each breath you are connected to everyone and everything, for the breath of the planet serves you as it does everyone and everything. The breath of the planet becomes the breath of the cosmos, and with it, with each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything, including the divine. A light, a resonance originating from the far reaches of the cosmos, drawing closer with each breath until eventually you can perceive the twin frequencies which together comprise and express as divine presence. The divine itself and perfect health intertwine such that there is no separating one from the other. Eventually, that light connects in, perhaps initially at your nostrils, and then eventually, instantly, to every aspect of your being, known and unknown. An invitation extended to each of the smallest aspects of you. Come, return to your natural state of alignment and resonance. The artifacts of dissonance appearing to fall away and exit through the universal drain. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. One. It's easy for me to get quickly lost because as the illusion melts away, time no longer is relevant. And of course, we can sit here for all of eternity, and it would be so beautiful. And so for those that are listening, if you'd like to sustain the experience, you can always pause the podcast here and then restart when you're ready to rejoin with language and so on. Just checking in with you, Joseph, and seeing if there's anything coming up that you'd like to give voice to or reflect on or ask about here.
Yeah, it's just the integration of the self that is happening when you go through this, I would say, meditation for me. Integrating everything, even the divine within yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, Ken, that is so different, what you are teaching and where you became a message of. Just fascinating. It's a complete new way of seeing things. It's just like a transformation happening. It's good. Why do you think that we need to integrate ourselves? Why do you think, is there any purpose to it? I mean, when we are born with so many challenges, I mean, we have to forgive ourselves. I was talking with Megan Unan recently, why we are born to forgive ourselves? We are born now, we have to integrate ourselves, Why is that all happening?
Well, to me, it's the purpose. It's why we're here. It's to remember and experience. To me, it's the unique opportunity that that accompanies the incarnation. I mean, with the body, with the mind, with separation, we have an opportunity to have an experience of integration. And so that is to say, of our innate wholeness. And the innate wholeness is given birth through these dynamics. Through them, we remember, and most critically, in my view at least, experience who we really are. And my perception is that that's a unique opportunity in the incarnation, in the human incarnation, to have that experience. So it doesn't appear that way, though. It looks like here we are suffering, here we are facing all these challenges. What is the point of all of this? But if we look at the challenges, as the suffering, as the things that are being animated in what I think of as the separate self, if we look at those as a pathway or the opening to divinity, to the integrated self, then eventually they can be something that we celebrate rather than resist. And in the celebration, we can open up to that experience, in a really profound and beautiful way. Or we can resist it, and eventually we'll still open into it. To me, it's inevitable.
Yeah, maybe all of suffering is caused by this separation.
For sure. I think that's true. I think suffering is caused by the illusion of separation. I think pain, for sure. It's without a doubt. And so I see the role of suffering as the path to integration, the path to wholeness. I don't see it like God is an angry God. You must suffer and remember who you are and crawl to me. I see it as the suffering is how we learn, how we encounter what is real and what isn't real. And of course, the suffering ultimately, even though it appears from the perspective of separation to be the most real thing, in truth, we come to the realization, and most critically, the experience, it is not real at all. It is simply an illusion that reveals the wholeness, divine presence, the ocean.
Yeah. Now I would like, it was amazing. I'm so calm now. I would like to ask you one more last question. May I?
Please.
I would like to know more about, so can you tell us more about your forthcoming book, which is called, just like our topic today, Resonance, the Path of Spiritual Mastery. Why are you writing it, and for whom is it? What for whom is it? It's for everybody. But it's more like, maybe the question I want to add is, what do you mean by resonance and spiritual mastery? And how is it related to your forthcoming book? I mean, whatever one of those questions, just choose one, because I'm kind of talking a little bit spaced out here.
That's what happens when we spend time together in deeper transmission. Well, one of the things that I love about the word resonance is that it has an intimate meaning that's probably different for each of us. And resonance that sustains, in my view, is a function of what is integrated, and experiences of dissonance or resonance that does not sustain represents the unintegrated. And so to me, resonance, both the sustaining experience of divine presence and the temporary experiences of resonance, both are that path to spiritual mastery, which to me is just another way of saying the engagement or the developmental journey of coming to the fully integrated experience of ourselves. And so as we open on this path, as we step into it, we begin to realize things like the illusion of separation and its role, or the different stages of consciousness, or the role of healing, or what is even healing, or the illusion of control. And there are all of these kinds of topics that over time have been a function of that process of teaching and sharing with others. And so what's sort of funny, at least to me, is that the way that God communicates to me is backwards. It's like when I started, I was talking about things that very few people understood. or even had a clue about what I was speaking about. And over time, it's like as I integrate and embody, I'm more capable of talking about things that make sense to more and more people. And this book started as the introduction to what was going to be the first book. And then the introduction grew so big, I realized, oh, this is a book in and of itself. And when I realized that, I realized, oh, there's a class here for me to teach. So I've actually taught the class upon which the book is based, I don't know, 2 or 3 times already. And each time I teach it, I go into it at a deeper level. And then the book itself has become more than a meditation. It's become a very, very intimate walk with the divine for me. And it's like a place of transcription, a place of profound intimacy for me, a place of integration for me. It feels like it's the only thing I could do. I feel compelled to do it in the way that maybe we feel compelled to take a breath when we're ready to receive a breath or something like that. I can't even imagine my being expression without being engaged in this writing process. And then, I mean, I think on a very basic level, the people that I'm meant to serve, I mean, there are really kind of 2 different aspects to the way that I perceive God expressing through me. One of them is this encounter with divinity, this integration of divinity, and the other relates to, the natural outflow of that, the unique spiritual gifts, the expression of divine which I think of as the journey of the spiritual messenger. And so I just love supporting people and opening to an experience of divinity. And then that naturally becomes that exploration and support of a spiritual messenger. And I think we're all spiritual messengers. To me, being a spiritual messenger just means that the individual is sort of consciously aware of the role that divine presence plays in interactions with others in the natural world. Doesn't mean somebody's a healer or an author or a speaker or whatever necessarily. It could be any expression of being a human being in life is another aspect or another avenue for a spiritual messenger to express. So I guess you could think of this book as, at least in the cosmology that has been revealed to me through this work and so on, and my intimate walk with the divine, it's like the foundation or the bedrock underneath the foundation. And spiritual mastery, in my vernacular, would be that journey of deeper and deeper intimacy with the divine. It's sort of in the development of the human being, we can get into personal mastery. And then to me, spiritual mastery is kind of the next step in that developmental journey. Once I've mastered the personal and so on, there's an opening, a surrender into the mystical, into the mystery. And that's where spiritual mastery comes into play. So I guess I'm picking a couple of different questions and answering in a popcorn way for your question. Hopefully I'm starting to address it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. A spiritual mastery. And by the way, when will it be published, the book? Because I'm looking forward to read it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being published. You know what? The true answer is I don't know. I thought the book was absolutely ready to go and would be published in 2020 or 2021. And then when the pandemic hit, I started teaching the book in a new or aspects of the book on my YouTube channel. And I had never before, I didn't realize this at the time, but I never before taught anyone who hadn't taken classes with me before. So all of a sudden I'm interacting with a whole new audience. And some of what I'm teaching is being boomerang back to justify perspectives that are not resonant with what I'm teaching or what I think I'm teaching. And I thought, I need to really spend some time on the interior with what I'm teaching and refine this and get to a deeper level. And so I started rewriting the book thinking I was just going to be rewriting the chapter on consciousness. And what I discovered was my separate self was littered through the book and I didn't even know it. And so when I saw that, I went, here's an opportunity for me to engage in a deeper level of integration. Yes. And so my rewriting process has been sitting with the book, reading it out loud, and if my hands and feet stop buzzing, which is what happens in transmission, then I just sit with it in consciousness until they buzz and tingle again, or new language comes in, and then I adjust the language and move on. And so it's been this really beautiful, intimate experience, walk with divinity. But it's also sort of opened up an unknown in the sense, I'm not sure. I hope it's sometime soon, but I'm just with the process fully.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, there's one more little things I want to just touch before we come to a close, which is, I do think that I don't believe in a personal God, because I do believe in God, but it's not a personal God. You can call it whatever you said, whatever you name. I know there's, even I look outside and there's the outside that is in a sense, it's me, because I couldn't even be aware of it if it's not me also. But it's also bigger than me, the whole universe in a sense, right? Because I know there is this duality. And then I think, why would God need to be personal? If he would be personal, then he would probably lose the ability to, or she, the ability to be present with everybody, because we are all personal. There are billions out there, right? And we are, like in the Judeo-Christian tradition, it said we are created in the image of God. Of course, in Oriental philosophy, there's no creation, but there's the nature, and the Buddha nature, for instance, or the consciousness, which is one consciousness subjectively experienced by each one of us. So it's just a different way of expressing it, but it's a different cosmology, definitely. So I tend more towards the Oriental, not so much towards ours, even I respect it fully. But that whole thing about creation. I mean, there are so many people who say, look outside. I mean, look at this miracle. It had to be created, but maybe it's just a simulation. A simulation. I mean, what is a simulation? Like in India, they have this cosmic game. It's called Leela, and they have Maya, which is the illusion, the real illusion. There's not so much difference. I will not know it in my lifetime if this is right or that is right. You cannot know for sure. I just lean more towards seeing the world and everything as a simulation. So we can experience things and we can come back again, or maybe we can go to other worlds later on. I mean, it gets quite fascinating with certain scriptures in Buddhism, like there's the relativity of small and big, and every atom is its own universe. We are our own universe, and the universe is not the only universe, and there are multiple universes. There's nothing wrong with this either. It doesn't really matter. The main thing is that there is something bigger than me and you and everybody who is a human being, and bigger than cats and bigger than dogs and whatever, right? Obviously. I just think that it's not personal. It expresses itself in personality, which is when you talk about God, like the self, the big self, the big self, that which contains all selves, and they're all reflecting each other. And then it's a manifestation of that self in the flower, in the human, in the horse, whatever. And it's differently. And so as you said, we're all messengers. Yeah, because we are a billion ways the universe of God looks at itself in a personal way. And that's the game, that's the play. So I don't look at a God like a personal God, because I believe that would be just a projection of myself. And it is somehow, probably, if people do it. I'm very, I'm definitely saying I don't know anything, because I don't know other people can be right. I have experienced many, many times in my lifetime I was wrong. And it's a matter beyond right and wrong, because it's something where you say, well, I know for sure that I make a self-portrait about myself. It's a self-portrait and it's my ego. And everybody's doing it. But I know that I'm happier when I go beyond that self-portrait and I reach a universal self, which is a universal divinity. The self is a big concept in the East, and the no self in Buddhism, but it just means that again, what we talked about earlier, the map and the territory. But when we talk about the self in the East, it's engaged in a cosmic divine play. And when we talk about God in the West, and it's great together, both of it together, because it complements each other, and it shows us certain weaknesses in one and the other, right? Or strength in one and the other. But when we talk about God in the West, I feel like people identify too much with some kind of image. And I told you before about my experience. I mean, I have experienced this personal God somehow, but then I doubted it. That's personal. I thought, I came to the conclusion actually that even though it was so intense, I still come to the conclusion that it was more my own interpretation from reading the Bible, from studying divinity, and being always surrounded by this with other people. Anyway, it really, when I think about it, it doesn't matter. The main thing is, I think, to integrate the self, as you say, and to refer things to your higher self, basically, whatever that is. But it seems it's just a pure observation, a pure witnessing the higher self, and the lower self is more like, it's also good. It's like the self which experiences, which eats food, which has sex, which does beautiful things like walking on a mountain or going out in the ocean with a sailing boat. That is basically, the higher self cannot do it without the lower self. It goes together, because as the Hindus say, they have a beautiful metaphor. With that, I will conclude probably, and then you have, of course, opportunity to respond. But it's they speak about the two birds. There are two birds, two best friends on the same self tree, and that same self tree, the two birds, one has that halo. It's also like you can see a painting of it. I get the mosquitoes, that's why I'm moving so much on my feet. And the other is eating the fruit of the tree. And the higher self, so to speak, that other bird, one of the two best friends, is just observing and just watching it. But the lower, the other bird, which is eating the fruit of the same self tree, it's all metaphorically, of course, feels sorrow in its unwisdom. It feels sorrow in its unwisdom. But when it looks at its higher self, it feels liberated, and it feels whole. And all goes together nicely. There's nothing, that is the main problem for me in the West. We always try to overcome evil. And then the good has to win over evil. Just like the Bible ends, it's amazing. I mean, for me, that is just pure hallucination. I don't want to offend anybody, of course, because when people believe this, then I will respect it. But I just say the good becomes worse than the evil sometimes by trying to fight it all the time and making it disappear. Because ultimately, I think it's like the Taoists say, the yin and the yang means the shadow side and the sunny side of the mountain. That means yin and yang. And when you have the good and you have the evil, when you have the evil and you have the good, and in the evil is the good also, and in the good is also the evil. So there is belongs together. You look out in this universe, and there is no, probably what I think, there's no absolute goodness out there. There probably, I don't believe in aliens, or maybe there are aliens, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe there are aliens. Of course there are aliens. It's so big, this universe, but they're probably also fighting sometimes, like in the Star Wars, right? So, it doesn't go away. What we learn from it is that, like the Buddha says, to find the middle, to avoid the extremes. In other words, I avoid to be only good, and I avoid to be only bad. And the consciousness is something to know that I have both in me, like a shadow side in me. We all have a shadow side. And if I don't do certain things, the shadow side, which I desire and want, the shadow side will become stronger and will come out in certain strange ways. So the challenge for me is really to live life, walking the middle, and look at the world somehow a little bit different than who we are, because in a sense, the world will always be like this. The world will never become only good. I don't think so. And that there's this other beautiful thing, and then I really have to stop. It's like, because for me, it's always a big question. Good and evil was a big question. I went to India for many years. When I was young, I really needed to know it a little bit more. And he speaks about a serpent. He says the venom of a serpent, it can be used for medicine. It can be used to kill somebody. The serpent, he says, doesn't know about it. For the serpent, it's just a substance. And that is beautiful for me, because it's everything, every technology, you look at it, is like that venom of the serpent. You can, or emptiness itself is like, you can use a glass of water, empty water, drink every day a liter of whiskey, right? Or you can put in water or milk or whatever. It's the usage of it, right? How you use it. And the same, and that is our life. That is our world. Anyway, I'm talking way too much now. Thank you very much for now. I want to still wait for your answer, and then I think we have to come to the closing. Now you know how talkative I am. Huh?
That's wonderful, Joseph. You know, what I hear you reflecting on are what I interpret as the stages of consciousness. And to me, there are sort of 4 basic stages, really 5. We're born into what I think of as stage 0, but I mean, none of us are newborn who are participating in the conversation or listening on the podcast. So setting that aside, 1 is a disempowered and unintegrated perspective. And in stage 1, there's good and evil. And it's a critical question. And I can be on the side of good, or I can be on the side of evil. And if I'm on the side of good, maybe somebody else thinks they're on the side of good. It's a struggle. That's the polarity. How am I going to be safe? And of course, it never resolves. To your point, there is no resolution. And in my perspective, there's no way to come to true safety without divinity, however you perceive it, personal or universal. From my perspective, it doesn't matter. And then there's a responsibility that gets taken that moves us from a disempowered and unintegrated perspective to an empowered and unintegrated perspective. And now I'm the author of everything I create, and God is my servant. And this is a profound perspective. And we're pursuing something very different here. Now we're not pursuing safety. We're pursuing the dream. Here's my dream. It's a separate dream. It's my empowered dream. I want to create this. But again, there's a glass ceiling. And the glass ceiling here is I can't achieve or accomplish in separation that which I most want, which consciously or unconsciously is, in my language, the resolution of the core wound. And the core wound, in my view, has something to do with unconditional love. And there's no way to really experience that until we surrender, until we let go of our instinct to control and open up to the divine expression. And that opens us to a transition into what I call stage 3 consciousness, which is whole and unintegrated. Unintegrated because we're still surrendering. You're only surrendering to something that is other than you. So still in separation, but we've done a lot of integrating from the stage 1 and 2. Well, the glass ceiling of 3 is spiritual practice itself. We can't practice our way into union because the last practice that survives is surrender. And we can't surrender our way into union because we're surrendering to something other than us. So we hit the glass ceiling, and now that falls away. And eventually we open into this experience of union consciousness. And the challenge is we see these different perceptual views. We see the validity of each of them, and we're trying to come up with and synthesize a cohesive narrative. But it's very difficult to do until we're in an integrated experience. What is 4? 4 is an integrated experience of disempowerment, empowerment, and wholeness. So only in 4 is everything there. And to your point at the beginning of our time together, we can't speak of that directly. It's a parable, right? It's a parable. It's a metaphor. We can't have a literal conversation about that dynamic. But when we are speaking in parable, if we're in an integrated state in stage 4, that message is resonating in all stages of consciousness, and something profound and beautiful has opened up. And with that, I think my time has come to a close. And I will just say this with regard to the transmission earlier. for anyone who's still sitting in that space, I just invite you to return the universal plug, and I'll bring this transmission to a close. And Joseph, deep bow of gratitude for sharing. I'm trying to do this with my hands in front of the mic without knocking the mic. Deep bow of gratitude for you sharing this platform, and most especially your wisdom and your presence. It's been a real joy to share this time with you. Thank you.
Yes, same with me. I'm happy you closed it now, because I was about to talk again.
We'll just have to have a conversation another day. We'll have to continue this.
No, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you so much, Ken. Let's close the podcast 1 second. I have a little. Okay, thank you, Ken, for having been on the show. It was a real pleasure and learning experience. And thank you, my dear listeners, for joining us today. The recap of the show with some bullet points are in the show notes, with all the links mentioned during the interview on bythebeach.com, particularly Ken's website, kenwstone.com. And the book you can also find on that website. You can find the retreats on the website, and the link will be in the show notes, but it's easy to remember, www.kenwstone.com. So if you like this podcast, please subscribe to have you here again for our next episode. This is your host, Joseph Schinwald. Thank you and goodbye until we meet again.